All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Mark Spafford. I'm the assistant chair. I'll be sitting in this evening for Kellen, who is off this evening. We'll be completing our Monday, April 17th of 2023 Utility Advisory Board meeting. And Ms. Lene, will we have a roll call, please?
Carroll?
Here.
Blick?
Present.
Garrell? Spafford?
Here.
Toom?
Here.
Wells Mangold? Klecker?
Here.
Thank you. Looking for approval of the minutes for the UAB meeting on February 20th of 2023.
Move approval of those minutes.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you. Minutes approved. This is the time we have public comment. Do we have anybody in the audience that, or online, John, that we're looking to do public comments? Now would be that time. Doesn't look like it. Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. Let's looking for the approval of the consent agenda for the West Central Wisconsin Biosolids facility for February 16th, March 7th, and March 16th.
I will make a motion for consent agenda approval. Minutes for the meetings from February 16th, March 7th, and March 16th, 2023.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
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 Consent agenda is approved. Oh, now we're moving on to new business. So this, we're going to talk about the resolution recommending approval of the Mann Valley Corporate Park Utility Construction. Mr. Kevin.
Yes, Chair Spafford, I have just not a full presentation, but a brief presentation to kind of go over what's in your packet. I'm going to step up to the podium and just kind of explain the project and what we're after tonight. Look, here come the reinforcements, so I always like that. I believe this is page 10 in your packet. This is a map of Mann Valley, and actually just north of Mann Valley down Radio Road. This diagram explains the water and sewer project to get water and sewer into Mann Valley. As you saw in your packet, Mann Valley, this project has been going on since about 2011 and maybe slightly before that. It's a little over 300-acre corporate park on the west side of River Falls. And Miss Carrie Schreiner is here tonight, and she has been commissioned to get some businesses out into this corporate park. And she said, in order for me to do that, we need some water and sewer in Mann Valley. So anyway, that's kind of true, but actually we decided as a team, and this has been going on for 10 years, and we finally have pulled the trigger. We went out and got bids on providing about 4.5 miles of water and sewer in there, and about 2 miles of sewer. So here it is in front of you. We did end up having 2 bids, and the winning bidder, Haas and Sons Incorporated bid along with A1, and Haas and Sons came in about $2 million under what our anticipated budget was, which we were pretty happy with. And they will be getting going on construction on this project later in 2023 and complete it by the end of 24. So it'll be bringing the water right here from Paulson Road. We'll be connecting that up down Paulson Road. This is called the North Loop, if you remember that. That'll be going in later this year. We'll be connecting onto that and coming down Radio Road with water. We'll be coming across the university property, then down into Mann Valley. The green is the sewer, so this is just water down Radio Road. On the south end of the project, we'll also be putting in a lift station down here. Sewer lift station. We'll be moving it from the one by DeSanctis Park out here just a little ways right into this area right here on a piece of property the city purchased not that long ago. And then the sewer, sewer flows down the dry, what's this called, the dry run? Dry run, is that called Dry Creek Run? Dry run right here, and then this is the low spot. Then there'll be a force main back to the existing main. We'll be running electric in here as well. So this is the project. This is really gonna set it up nice for Mann Valley. Some roads will be installed, water sewer will be in, street lights will be in. That's one of the alternates. We feel very confident with that bid for the street lighting. Some really nice looking street lights that are gonna let people know they're in Mann Valley. I know I've talked to each of you individually about this project. I think it's a key component for the future for River Falls. This corporate park is one of the most contiguous corporate parks in the whole St. Paul, Minneapolis metropolitan area. We feel it's a good piece of property to attract a really high level business into this area, or multiple businesses as well. So the resolution in front of you tonight is asking for approval to forward this to the city council for their final approval to go ahead to award the bid to Haas and Sons. Are there any questions about the project at this point?
Kevin, when we come down Radio Road there, and of course there's the golf course out there and radio station, will there be laterals for those connections in the future at all, or is there any interest in that, or is that not really desirable?
I don't believe the design has stubs in there for right now. It's someday though, we could be connecting to all those properties along there. If the golf course develops, or if something up in this sector develops, we'll be coming off of that line and then tapping it. There will be right down here where my cursor is, there will be a pressure reducing station right in this area here. That's also a part of this project, so they'll be hooked up to our SCADA system. There's a break in this right about here where my cursor is. The sewer from this point will flow north, and then from this point it will flow south. So when this develops here, they'll put sewer in to flow south. If the golf course develops, it'll flow north. So the break is right about where the golf course is to keep that gravity. Any other questions? I mean, this is pretty exciting. This is a big project. Josh is here, Josh Solinger, our finance director, if you have questions regarding that. Otherwise, I'll leave it there. And again, in front of you is a resolution to move this forward to City Council for their final approval. Thank you.
Can you talk just real quick, sorry about
No, you're fine.
The right-of-way? So it'll be on the golf course side in the right-of-way? And then once it crosses the university, you've told us this before, but just a real quick recap.
Yeah, they'll open cut that, so it'll go down the golf course side. They're gonna actually, I think, open cut. We just learned today, I learned from Todd, our engineer, that Radio Road and County Road U have been turned over from St. Croix County to the city's jurisdiction. So that will allow us to do what we need to do along Radio Road and County Road U. He came in midday and told me that. I don't think that's secret, I hope not. But he indicated that to me today, so those will be in this, if everything passes and the council approves that, that'll be in the jurisdiction of the city.
And then university?
And then it cuts across, there's an easement, the university has granted an easement already, that easement is done and approved to cut right across the university property, and then right down there.
Comes across that dirt road that?
Yes, yep,
Yeah, okay.
yep, and the university was very cooperative in granting that easement just for water and sewer.
Sure, thanks.
Okay.
Any other questions at this point?
With looking at Haas's bid, they've got the road, curb and gutter, everything's in there. Is this the final design for the park as to how the roads are going to be laid out, or is this just an initial design so you could say to a prospective individual that may want to move a business to the city, hey, we've got roads here, we've got this? Or is this, like I said, is this final, or is this subject to say, well, we need to add some more stuff later?
It's final for now.
Okay.
Yeah, to that point where, again, like you said, because, Kerry doesn't know if we're going to get one customer that wants 200 acres up in this area, which would probably limit the roads, or is this going to be divided up into 4 sectors, which would require more road work? So it will be customer dependent. We do feel that this one road cul-de-sac coming in here will get us into the park, And then over here, this road to this point, and it's kind of wait and see for the middle. You don't want to get too far out in front of your skis. If you break it up now, it might deter a larger 200-acre site that somebody might want. So it's kind of a wait and see game a little bit. Am I characterizing that correctly, Gary? It's like we thought a lot about that. And one of our early designs had a road coming right through the middle and bisect this. And I think we came to the agreement, maybe we don't want to do that, kind of leave it more open. We had one design that had a road coming along the edge of this bluff down this way and then back over. But again, there's so much uncertainty about the customers that we will get in there. Is it one big one, 5 little ones, more? So this gets us in the park and then ready to branch out more if we have to. Does that help?
Yep, that's helpful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, looking for approval for the resolution, please.
Move to approve the resolution to accept the bids for the utilities for the Mann Valley Corporate Park.
Second?
Any further discussion? Okay, looks good. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those, thank you, Nick. All those opposed, say nay. All right, resolution passes. All right, moving on to reports. It looks like we have 4 of them, Kevin. We start with the WPPI.
Yes, I would like to introduce, we're very lucky tonight to have Tim Nodler. He's Executive VP of Power Supply from WPPI Energy. Tim and his staff gave a presentation, I think it was last month at our executive team meeting, on MISO, so Midcontinent Independent System Operators. I know over the last 12 to 18 months, many of you have had questions regarding power supply. Who manages our power supply? What are our power supply resources? And then how WPPI plays in that game. And I saw the presentation, I thought, well, this would be very good for this group to hear. The first time I heard it, it was a 60-minute presentation. Tim's got this pared down to about 15 to 20 minutes. And he said if you want to interact throughout the presentation, it'll probably go a little bit longer. If you don't want to wait till the end. So it's totally up to you folks how you want to go. I think if you have a question in the middle, feel free, but then realize it's going to take a little bit more than 20 minutes. So Tim, thanks for coming tonight. And let's learn more about the I'm going to read it. Midcontinent Independent System Operators, better known as MISO, which is a lot easier to say.
Right. Thank you, Kelvin.
Thanks, Tim.
It's great to be here, and I hope you do feel comfortable interacting. If you have questions along the way, it's a lot more fun if it's a discussion than death by PowerPoint. And Kevin's right. This was probably at least 60 minutes the first time, and so I've pared it way back. Hopefully not too much that it cuts out the things that help you understand what's going on with MISO. I did want to thank Kevin too. You see one side of Kevin here, and I see a different side at WPPI, where he's on our executive committee, which is a great committee, and he also chairs the Rate Services Advisory Group. So that's so critical for WPPI's and member success to have members in those roles and making sure that what we do is what members need. So we really appreciate Kevin's work. MISO. So this one, we interact with MISO all the time as WPPI, and as members of WPPI, you benefit from that participation. They help get the top dollar for our resources. They help optimize our resources and help keep the cost for serving customers as low as can be. The MISO was organized about 22 years ago. They were the first regional transmission organization that was approved by the federal regulators called FERC. And since that time, they have grown significantly in the services they provide. It would be pretty tough to do this business without MISO now. They bring increased reliability and they bring increased economic efficiency to the electricity market. This is a summary of the functions that MISO provides, the high-level functions. And I think about it a little differently than these words, but the first area that I pay attention to is reliability. They are charged with keeping the lights on. Now, we all participate in that. We do our share, but they are like the conductor of the orchestra to make sure that the reliability is there on the bulk system. You're taking care of that in your community on the distribution system, but for the whole region, MISO looks at that. The second thing is economic efficiency. They run a pretty big market. It's $40 billion a year in electricity transactions between utilities and power producers of other types. It's a fairly efficient market. It took a while to learn it. There's a lot of subtleties to it, but it works pretty well. The third function they provide has to do with making sure that there's enough supply in the future as the power system changes, as units get retired. And they set the rules of the road for how we count generating capacity. You know, a wind generator is not the same as a combustion turbine gas-fired generator. Well, how those count is set by MISO. And they also set the reserve requirements that are necessary. We have to maintain certain levels of reserves, which helps with reliability. So they set the rules that we play within and do business with other parties. And then the last thing is they plan the grid of the future, the power lines that carry the electricity from the plants where they're produced to the customers that use it. This is the area that MISO encompasses. So they touch on parts of 15 states plus the province of Manitoba in Canada. The blue area is called MISO North. Green is MISO Central, and the orange is MISO South. MISO South was added years after the first two areas, and there's quite limited connections between MISO South and the other areas. They are able to help each other somewhat, but that's a weakness that MISO is working to solve going forward.
And those issues get solved with more transmission?
They do, yeah. And the last part of the presentation, I'll go into more transmission a little bit. I wanted to touch a little more on the reliability role that MISO provides, how they are the conductor for the system. They have an organized plan to keep the lights on during emergencies. Emergencies usually occur when demand is high, so like all the air conditioners are running in the summer, or it's extremely cold and people are using more power in the wintertime. And then you have another simultaneous event, like a failure of a large generator or a big transmission line. Maybe it gets full of ice and falls down or something like that. That's usually what results in emergencies. But MISO prepares a plan, and we all have a role in that plan. They coordinate, WPPI and other utilities comply with the instructions that MISO gives. They have a reliability pecking order, and that's what this slide summarizes, and it's not necessary to read the pieces. What's important to know is that there's an organized approach if the system is in trouble that MISO implements to try and keep the lights on and keep the system as a whole from going black. The first types of things that they do is they access all the capacity that's available online generators that hasn't been dispatched already. So they bring that in. Then they do things like they curtail the sales that are being made outside from MISO to regions outside of MISO to keep that help inside the pool, if you will. Then they do things like curtail interruptible load. We have maybe about 40 megawatts of interruptible load at WPPI. These are customers that get a discount on their power bill in return for giving the utility the right to interrupt them. After that, they call on customer-owned emergency generators. Then there's things like public appeals. They'll tell the utilities if things are bad enough, make announcements on TV, on the radio, everywhere you can, and let the public know and ask them to conserve. And if everything goes bad, the last step is rolling blackouts, but in an organized fashion where one feeder at a time is tripped off. Now, MISO does not tell you which feeder to trip off. That'd be part of your plan and WPPI's plan, which ones go off and how long they stay off and things like that. But MISO implements it. Hopefully, we never have to see it go that deep, but they do get into the emergency procedures somewhat. And I wanted to show you a practical example from recent past. This happened on December 23rd of 2022, so just 4 months ago or so. And it happened on a day when a lot of us were on vacation for Christmas. You never see loads very high then, but it was cold, and it was cold over a big part of the country, and parts of the country, especially in the south, got in real trouble. And so MISO declared an emergency. We didn't know why at the time, but it turned out to be to help the neighbors to the south. Like Tennessee Valley Authority was into rotating blackouts, Duke Energy in the Carolinas, and Associated Electric in Missouri, they were in real trouble. And so MISO called an emergency, and then that freed up some power that could be sent to those places to keep customers from freezing. That was called Winter Storm Elliott. MISO ended up providing almost 5,000 megawatts of help. I think City of River Falls probably uses 30 about.
On a peak, our peak is about 30, so we're about a 20, 21 on each day.
Just to
20.
put it in context, how much they were able to help other regions, about 5,000 megawatts. And they did call for a curtailment of our interruptibles that is scheduled a few hours in advance because we have to give these customers notice. And so we called the customers, told them what time they had to curtail, and just before they were supposed to curtail, the load had dropped enough that MISO called it off. But a lot of the customers did curtail for an hour or two anyway. On the map here, you see where the flows were. You see it was coming out of Canada, Ontario and Manitoba, a lot of it, some of it from the PJM interconnection, which is Pennsylvania, Jersey, Maryland, about 5,000 to the south and east especially. Okay, now I'd like to switch roles that MISO does and talk about how we interact on a daily basis with them. And this goes into the optimization of that energy market. So every day our system operators give MISO a projection of what loads will be, what the customers will use by hour the next day. And on this graph, you see a typical or several typical profiles for WPPI's load. The x-axis is the hour of the day. The vertical axis is the load in megawatts. So that red curve is a hot summer day. Air conditioning is really high in the afternoon hours, and so that's when you see the peak. The other curves on there, the green and the blue, were more of a spring day, and you don't see as high a load. What MISO needs to know is how much load we project in every hour of the next day. We have our members divided up into 5 areas. River Falls is in western Wisconsin. Our largest load block is in eastern Wisconsin. But for each of those 5, we give MISO hour by hour projections every day of the year. The other thing that our operators do is provide a set of offers to sell into MISO. So for every generating resource that we own or have contracts with, we give MISO a price quote. This slide shows the location and the types of generation that you effectively own through WPPI. All of the WPPI members own WPPI, and then we hold the ownership in these plants or in the contracts. You can see there's many different types of generation out there. We have nuclear, coal-fired, natural gas-fired, wind and solar, and we buy some under slice of system purchases from other utilities. All of those are offered into MISO. We sell all those resources there, and then we buy from MISO to serve all of our loads. Now, the factors that we put into those price offers to sell to MISO depend on the type of unit, but if you take like a coal-fired or a gas-fired unit, you'd need to know what's the fuel cost, how efficient is a unit. They call that heat rate on a unit. So how much heat do you have to put into it to get a kilowatt hour out? And then things like how does your maintenance cost change with respect to producing extra power? So it's the incremental cost. And we develop those for every one of our units, for every hour of the next day, all year long. I wanted to give you a feel for what the differences are between some of these generators. And I've shown 5 different generation profiles for different types of units. On the left-hand side of the page are intermittent resources. Intermittent means we cannot control the output. We could turn them off, but we can't really make them run unless the wind is blowing or the sun is shining. So they follow what nature provides. The top one on the left is our largest wind farm, Bishop Hill. It's in Illinois. And you see that output on this particular day varied from about 30 megawatts to roughly 112. And you saw those load curves on the other page. This doesn't necessarily line up with that very well. Some days it does, other days it's completely opposite, where it's producing most in the middle of the night. So you need something to fill the gap between a resource like this and load. There's a solar project on the bottom, Point Beach Solar. We buy 100 megawatts out of that facility. And I've shown 2 generation curves there. The green is on a summer day. And it was a day when it was mostly sunny, but there were a few clouds that would come across. And you can see when a cloud would come across those panels, the output drops and then it passes on and the output goes back up. That also doesn't look much like a load profile. The blue is a winter day and it was mostly cloudy. So there's just a few hours that those solar panels are producing on that winter day. And if it's cloudy, it can be quite low. 100 megawatts out of capability, but a lot of hours it's much lower than that. Now I'll contrast that with dispatchable generation on the right-hand side. And there's 3 types of generators shown there. The one on the top right is a combustion turbine generator. It burns natural gas. It's a jet engine that spins a generator. It's relatively expensive to operate. But when the price gets high enough, we turn it on and use it. Or if reliability is a problem and we need power right now, we can turn that on. It could be on in 10 minutes. And when the price drops, we shut it off. So that top one, you see the block up, on for a few hours, off. The times it's off, we're buying cheaper. The next one down is our largest coal-fired plant, Boswell in northern Minnesota. That plant, you don't want to turn on and off all the time because it takes a while to bring a coal plant online. But you can vary the output. So if the price is cheap, you reduce the load on the generator, and you see that in the nighttime hours. That's when we could buy off that MISO market cheaper than run that unit. The other hours, the on-peak hours, it's producing well. Point Beach is a nuclear unit on the bottom. You hardly see it wobble. 600 megawatts flat out, just about every hour of the year except when it's refueling. It has a very low incremental cost, so you hardly ever would want to back down. You could physically do it, though. Anytime, ask questions if you want to.
I would like to just make a comment about power supply, though, that you didn't mention here. So You mentioned a little bit that WPPI is not only a buyer, but we're also sellers. So another thing that Power Supply does, they manage our long-term energy purchase contracts. Those contracts really help us out because sometimes they're much more lucrative than the current market pricing, which allows us to hedge. So we're selling energy from some of our power supplies into the market while our long-term contracts are hedging us down. We're able to make money and reduce the overall energy costs. So if energy is $100 a megawatt hour on the market, because we're also sellers in the market, and then combined with our long-term contracts, we might only be paying $74 a megawatt hour, something like that.
That's right. That's one of our main jobs, is to
manage
keep that as balanced as we can.
So you're a buyer and a seller, and then managing those long-term contracts. We spent a lot of time on that on the executive committee, but a very important component. And it's when you're managing that well, you're really able to keep the cost stable for our customers. That's all I wanted to say on that.
Sure. Yep. Thank you, Kevin. Okay, I wanted to show you some pictures of tools that MISO has out there, and if any of you are interested in going and looking on the internet yourself, I put the link there where you can see this map. But this is a map of the MISO footprint, and what it shows is the energy price and how that varies across MISO. So this was a snapshot. Just took a picture of the computer screen, and these prices would apply for 5 minutes, and then it changes. That energy price is called the locational marginal price. So it depends on the location, and it's a marginal price. It's not an average price. The color denotes the price. So I can look at this and I know that blues and purples are real low prices, reds and oranges are real high prices, and greens and yellows are kind of in between. The difference in color, if this were a perfect world and you had all the transmission lines you needed, a copper sheet out there, this would be one color. The price would be the same everywhere, but that's not reality. So where you see a big difference in color, especially in a narrow region, that means that there's some transmission facility that's overloaded. And MISO then has to tell a generator on one side to back down and start more expensive generation on the other side of that transmission constraint to make sure the facilities don't overload. And so if you look on this map down in the south, you see red and you see purple right next to each other. The red is a price of somewhere in the $600 a megawatt hour range. That's like $6 a kilowatt hour, something like that. And the purple is actually a negative price. So that is a very strong signal to those generators to do what MISO wants them to do. Here's another example from a different day. And I wanted to show you this because it's really unusual. It's usual in the sense that there's not such stark differences like red to purple. But what's unusual about this one is that the lowest prices are in eastern Wisconsin. This was last week. It was on a day when I think it was about 80 degrees in eastern Wisconsin. The wind was blowing, the sun was shining, and we had more power than we knew what to do with. And so the prices were extremely low there, and things were not as nice in Minnesota and the Dakotas. So you actually saw higher prices there. So how does MISO come up with those prices? It's really a complicated process, but it's a simple concept. And what I'm trying to do with this diagram is give you a conceptual feel for how this works. So remember, all the utilities, all the load serving entities turn in a load forecast for the next day by hour. And so MISO takes all those projections and they stack them up. What's the total load that MISO thinks it's going to have to serve in every hour of that day? So on the left-hand side of this graphic, you see the total load. I've made up the numbers just to illustrate the concept. On the right-hand side, they take those generator offers and they stack them up from the lowest cost or the lowest price to the highest price. They stack them up, and then they look at how much generation do they need to meet that load projection, and they take the lowest cost generators necessary to meet that. So on this diagram, you see where that yellow arrow goes across? The most expensive generation that you'd have to pick to serve that load would be $25 a megawatt hour. And then the strange thing about this is everybody gets paid that price. So that's called the clearing price. And all these guys that offered at a lower price, like $20 or $10 or $0, they all get paid $25 because that's the clearing price. Oh, you might wonder, on the bottom of that stack on the right, there's a negative price, minus $25 a megawatt hour. Why would anybody do that, you might wonder. And where I see that happen is, especially with wind generators. Wind generators get a production tax credit, and it's roughly $25 a megawatt hour. They have to produce to get the $25 a megawatt hour from the government. And so you can guess what happens if the market price is 10, they'll get the $10 plus the 25. If the market price happened to be minus 10, they still want to run, they'll pay MISO $10 to take the energy, and they get 25 from the government. So that's how you get some negative prices. Now I want to shift gears again, and this is to take a look more at MISO's role of ensuring that there's enough reliable generation in the future to meet our needs and make sure our load is served reliably. So there's a massive transition going on in the industry right now. Coal units are retiring. Natural gas units are retiring, not as fast as coal, but they are retiring too. Both are dispatchable generation. Both have usually got some kind of a fuel inventory someplace. Like there's a coal pile or there's a storage cavern with natural gas in it. That's being replaced with wind and solar largely. And in order to follow the load, because those are intermittent resources, you have to have something like batteries or other gas-fired units that can make up the difference between those intermittent generators and what the load needs. So this diagram shows what MISO sees as new generators that want to interconnect to the MISO system. And so on the left-hand side of the page there, you see the chart with the bars, and there's a 171 on the top right one for 2022. That says there were 171,000 megawatts of new generation that wanted to interconnect in 2022. MISO's total capacity is less than 170,000 today. So that's a huge amount of generation. And then if you look at what types of generation are asking to connect, the colors signify the different types. So the yellow is solar, the orange is hybrid, which is solar with some batteries, and the red is batteries, the green is wind, and the blue is gas, and there's no coal. So most of it is wind, solar, and batteries. A couple of things to think about when you look at that. About 100,000 megawatts of solar, think of how much land that covers. You need about 5 acres per megawatt, so that's 500,000 acres of land. An area 25 miles by 31 miles full of solar to produce that much as what MISO is seeing in their interconnection queue. Another interesting thing is on the right-hand side here, it shows what types of generation are being asked for in each region, and I'll just touch on 2 regions. The Minnesota, western Wisconsin area is that top pie chart, and the green is wind, the yellow is solar, about equal amounts of solar and wind. And then quite a bit of batteries and hybrid, a little bit of gas. Eastern Wisconsin's different. It's over half solar and batteries like another quarter. So a lot of that type of generation. Where is this going? This is where MISO is being asked to study these new generators going in. They're all over the place. It is a huge task to figure out whether the transmission system can accommodate this, and you never know which ones actually will get built and which ones are pie in the sky yet. But very, very extensive, and I've never, in all the years I've been in the industry, I've never seen anything close to this. So how do you get enough capability? And then that brings us to MISO's last role that I wanted to touch on, and that is plan the grid. Build more or plan more power lines to accommodate all that new generation and make sure that you have reliable delivery to the load. And so they have a study going on right now, a planning study. It's called the Long Range Transmission Plan, and it's being done in 4 tranches. They've finished the planning for tranche 1, and you see the results on this map. These are all planned 345,000 volt lines. If you drive I-90, 94 down to Madison, you see a line along that much of the way from Black River Falls to Madison. That's a 345,000 volt line. Or if you go up to Fargo on I-94, you see the big CapEx 2020 lines. Those are 345 kV lines. These are all 18 of these projects are 345 kV, and they come with a heavy duty price tag, $10.5 billion. Now we are involved in these in 2 ways. WPPI owns about 6.7% of American Transmission Company, which is eastern Wisconsin. They will have ownership of the transmission between about halfway between Tremval and Rocky Run, and then down to Columbia on the eastern side of Wisconsin. And then the second way we'll own is direct ownership, a piece of the transmission in western Wisconsin, most likely between Tremval and Rocky Run. Tremval is located right by Blair, Wisconsin, about 5 miles from Whitehall, or remember Whitehall. So that's tranche 1, which is already approved by MISO, but it's not approved to build yet. We still have to go through the process of getting approval from regulators to build that. And that will take years. Those facilities should be in service by about 2030. This shows where tranche 2 sits today. They're still tweaking this, but a couple of interesting points about this set of proposed transmission lines in our area. You see some green lines on the map. Those are 765,000 volt. We don't have anything in the area that high right now. They're huge lines. Another thing is you look, there's a dashed purple line across Lake Michigan. That would be a high voltage DC set of cables that goes underneath Lake Michigan. Not cheap, but it definitely would connect Wisconsin with Michigan more strongly and enable us to bring power from farther away, or when our wind and solar is overproducing, to get it out to somebody else that can use it. So lots more work to be done on this, but it makes you wonder if the public could actually take this many transmission lines coming. The cost of this will be over the $10.5 billion that tranche 1 cost.
But am I wrong to say that this is kind of a key in the long term to move the kilowatts from the renewables?
It is. Yeah, you've got to be able, you know, the wind doesn't blow evenly everywhere. And so in order to capture the diversity of when it's blowing in South Dakota but not in Wisconsin, or it's blowing in Illinois but not South Dakota, you need something to be able to reach over a long region. And that's what this transmission does. Okay. I wanted to show you what DC lines look like. These are some of the older DC lines in the country. This is a picture that's taken in North Dakota, where these 2 lines cross. If you are familiar with power lines, usually you see 3 main conductors, right? 1 for each phase. DC lines only have two main conductors, a plus and a minus. The lines shown here were built in the 70s. They were built to deliver power from the North Dakota lignite fields, generation on the lignite fields in central North Dakota to Minnesota. This shorter one on the left side is 250,000 volts, and it's going to Duluth. The taller one on the right side is 400,000 volts, and it's going to the Twin Cities. Now, these lines don't deliver coal-fired energy much anymore. There's mostly wind out in North Dakota, and the coal units are being retired.
This is where I was kind of joking at the EC. We've kind of come full circle on this electricity thing, and we go way back to the beginning when Tesla and Edison were fighting about AC versus DC current. And here we are now in 2023 arguing about AC versus DC current once again. And Edison won the first time. Let's see who wins this time.
Right. The thing, you may know this already, but AC systems, you can't really control very well where the power flows. It just flows according to the laws of physics. You can't steer it. But with DC, it's like having a valve, and you can turn the valve and force the power to go from point A to point B. So you can stretch the rest of the AC system better too by having those DC lines.
And then you can have converters to get the DC back to alternating current so the systems can run and your motors can run.
That's right. That's right. So that brings me to the end of the presentation. I just wanted to summarize some key takeaways that I hope came through the presentation. Number one is MISO is an integral part of our business. They coordinate the reliability in the system, they manage the flows on the grid, they provide that $40 billion efficient marketplace. They put out the rules of the road for capacity transactions, they plan the grid. And we and our members and your customers realize lower costs and better reliability because of MISO. But MISO is big and it's complicated, so we participate along with many other stakeholders in MISO constantly as a stakeholder and give them feedback and suggestions, try to protect our members' interests and our own interests, and make MISO a better RTO. So with that, I appreciate the opportunity to visit with you today, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them, or if you have questions later, just let Kevin know, and I'd be happy to visit with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you so much, Tim. It was as good the second time.
All right.
Enjoy that.
You could probably give it now.
Yeah, it's just it's interesting to me because the average person's flipping switches and they have no idea what's going on behind the scenes, even at this national, international level, in order to get electrons to your home or business every single day. And it's pretty amazing how it actually works. The planning, the people, the resources, the balancing, it's really amazing. So, and you have a great group of people at WPPI and their power supply department to ensure that happens for the 51 WPPI members. So
That's an honor to be part of that group, and so thrilled that River Falls is part of it.
I do have a question for you, Tim. So just out of curiosity, where are we going with the electric vehicles?
Yes.
And how does this,
Well, I don't know how fast they'll come, but there definitely are a lot more out there now. Electric vehicles present some opportunities. It's an opportunity for growth because they use a lot of electricity. It's also maybe an opportunity to manage some of the load a little better. We've got, like in Wanakee, we've put in place a special rate that's EV friendly, we call it, and it has a very low price from midnight to 5 a.m. And then it's got a quite high price from, I think it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon until 7 o'clock in the evening. And then the other hours are in between. And that's set up so that when somebody comes home with an EV and they plug it in the garage wall, we want them to program their onboard charger so it starts charging at midnight instead of when they got home from work. Because if it starts right away, it'll make our peak higher. If it waits until midnight, it doesn't affect our peak, and it's a lot cheaper to serve that. Other utilities have started putting in charging stations that they can control. So somebody could plug in their EV right away and start charging right away, but if the utility would like the load to go down a little bit, they can control it and back that EV off. So that's an opportunity I see as the utility side of things. From the customer side of things, if you commute a reasonable distance every day, like under 50 miles one way, an EV is a pretty nice way to do it. Charge it on either end or maybe even just at your house. And it's a lot cheaper than fuel. The price to buy it is a little more expensive.
Anybody else? Good?
Just curious, in general, what's the balance, the power coming from Canada? Do we get more power down below the border, or is it kind of even, or?
Right. Well, the scale is important to realize. First of all, Manitoba Hydro is about a 5,000 megawatt system, and MISO is about 150,000 megawatts. So that gives you an idea of the scale. Now, the capability between Manitoba and the United States, they just put in another line, but it's in the order of 3,000 megawatts that they can move from north to south. Most of the time, the Canadians supply more power and energy into the United States than they take out of it because they have surplus. That's an amazing system too, because they have capability in their dams and reservoirs to provide a lot of that mismatch between load and generation in the U.S. because they can just pond it up and use the water when they need the power. Lake Winnipeg is their main reservoir. It's 300 miles long, 80 miles wide, and they can fluctuate the level by about 4 feet. That's a terrific amount of energy. So it's really a good thing to have them connected. They're extremely reliable. But there's more that comes into the U.S. than goes to them. All right.
Thank you again.
Again, thank you, Tim.
Kevin, we have number 5 is finance report.
Yes, we have our finance director, Josh Solon, here tonight to talk through our finance report. I think he has an update too, because I was going through the packet again and I was looking at electric and I gulped a little bit and I'm like, something's got to be wrong. And he's going to explain it's a timing issue, Kevin. It's a timing issue. He's going to talk about that tonight.
So thank you, board, for having me. That was a fascinating presentation. I'm not gonna be able to top that. So I'm gonna just try to get through these dense numbers fairly quickly, but if you have questions, just feel free to shout them out. So as Kevin indicated, the numbers you see, so I'm gonna make sure that I do right by what's in your packet. I'm gonna present the numbers that are in here, but I'm also gonna share the updated numbers with you. The reason Kevin alluded to has to do with timing is our utility sales revenues are for the most part, not for the most part, are completely booked in a separate system we call North Star. We then have to take the utility sales figures out of North Star for the month and import those over to our general ledger on the city's enterprise resource planning system that we call MUNIS. So it's the timing of that manual import. Sometimes the packet materials are getting produced before our staff have had a chance to summarize all the sales data for the month and import that over to the general ledger. And then on the expense side, that's always to some degree until you get to the very end of the year going to be a little bit of a moving target. So you're actually going to see a little bit of variation on the expense side too. Not as much on the revenue side, but a little. So for the electric utility, in your packet, we show revenues year to date for so, and also another quick note too. I know that you have January, February, and March in your packet, so that had to do with the timing of year end, us trying to get through our audit process. So getting those first couple of months to you are a little delayed because we've been focusing our energy on getting through our audit, which is wrapping up but still ongoing. So I am going to only focus on what you see for the month of March. So year-to-date, March revenues for the electric utility totaled $3,016,504. Expenses totaled $3,410,918, or expenses in excess of revenues of $394,413. So looks scary, as Kevin indicated, but I have some updated numbers for you.
We like that.
Yeah. So, revenues for the month of March for the electric utility totaled $4,015,904, which if you go back and look at your packet, that's pretty darn close to what was budgeted for for what was the prior year to date. So we're tracking right along with prior year in this case. Operating expenses totaled $3,520,102, or net revenues in excess of expenses of $495,801. So much better outcome
Yeah.
there.
And tracking ahead of last year a little bit, which is good.
Yep. So this is going to be a recurring pattern. So I'm just going to do this fund by fund until we get to the end here. So in your packet for the water utility as of the end of March, we had revenues totaling $356,556 and expenses totaling $370,069 for expenses in excess of revenues of $13,513. With utility sales data included now for the month of March, the water utility at the end of March had operating revenues totaling $514,625, expenses totaling $458,905, for revenues in excess of expenses totaling $55,720. So you can see that those monthly sales are pretty substantial once those are getting entered in big batches.
I want to comment on that too, because I've always said, and if you look at last year, we were minus 25,000. I mean, this time of the year, typically for water, we are lagging a little bit because water is seasonal. So the fact that we have our head above water, no pun intended. I mean, pun is intended there. This is good for this time of the year because the revenue season's coming for water.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and as Kevin indicated, if you just look at that, what's in your packet, you would see that prior year, it was net expenses over revenues totaling $25,000. So we're actually flipping, it was about $80,000 to the good compared to this time last year for the water utility. So getting into, wastewater, get my packet information put together and organized here, jumping ahead of myself. Okay, so for the wastewater, in your packet, we had revenues for the month of March totaling year-to-date $608,975, expenses totaling $584,267, for revenues over expenses totaling $24,708. Again, with those utility sales figures in the mix now for March, month end of March for the year, revenues total $897,870. Expenses total $620,413 for net revenue over expenses of $277,457. Now, do keep in mind with the wastewater utility, we do have in the water utility actually, we do have some pretty significant capital projects underway. We haven't yet seen large invoices for those, but keep in mind that the figures I'm presenting don't include those capital expenses, but we did borrow for those, so the cash is in hand for those. It's just a matter of rocking and rolling on the projects and getting those invoices in to get them paid. For the stormwater utility, in your packet, we have revenues totaling $99,065. Expenses totaling $66,496, or revenues in excess of expenses totaling $32,569. With those utility sales in the picture now, we've got revenues for the end of March totaling $148,578, expenses totaling $72,760, or net revenues over expenses totaling $75,817. So in all 4 of the utilities, with those utility sales figures entered, the picture looks quite a bit better. So be glad to take any questions. Thank you.
And utility dashboards.
I have a couple notes dog-eared in my packet that I'll just draw your attention to. One is the 2022 Focus on Energy Annual Participation Report. On page 6 of that report, page 65 in your packet is a real nice summary of what our Energy Services Department did. Mr. Mike Noreen, along with our WPPI service rep, they go out and they are initiating programs within our community for both residential and commercial customers. And on page 6 of this report, page 65 overall, I should say Jenna Wills is who I should say from WPPI too. I just said WPPI rep. I think she deserves the credit to hear her name, so sorry. Willie, thank you, Jenna Willie. So anyway, so last year, the city of River Falls Electric Utilities sent $52,016 to Focus on Energy. That money comes out of our utility bills. And they got back into the community $161,653. So a 3-for-1, $1 in compared to $1 out. So we're real happy with that. We offer new customer design programs to commercial customers, lighting, other insulation and window programs to our residential customers. So they're real aggressive with that, and that is paying off that work for our customers. So it's always good to see the $3 come back into the community for every $1 sent out. I think that's very positive. River Falls, this is Dean is here, Dean Seaman with Wastewater. They've been participating in the SARS-CoV wastewater survey that's also in your packet. And there's some real nice charts and now some history about what's happened over the last couple of years related to what's in the stream. And you can see it's really flattened out since 21 and 22 and by looking in the packet. So just a real nice summary, and that's above and beyond for Dean they bottle it up and send it down every week, every Tuesday for the last almost over 2 years now. So anyway, that's a nice little summary of what's happened there. And it'll be interesting to see what history does with these types of reports and then how it's used in the future to check the wastewater stream for different diseases and viruses and things like that. Kind of an interesting experiment. I think that's really all I needed to draw your attention to today. I could go on and, well, I'll just wait if you ask me for announcements. I've just got one. Otherwise, that's what I have there. I'll just wait for my last one.
Great. Yep. So we can move right on to announcements.
Yeah. So tomorrow, April 18th, is National Linemen Day. As I joke with Lene, it's the Hallmark holiday, but our linemen definitely deserve credit for this. So she has a real nice Facebook post planned for tomorrow. Talk about what our linemen do in the city of River Falls. And that was noticed here a couple weeks ago during that heavy snowstorm we had of a foot or so of snow. And they were out at 2 in the morning restoring power to about 200 of our customers. And the theme is work safely and deliberately, and the guys are pros. When you get in these types of situations, you really realize how committed and dedicated and smart these guys are when it comes to making sure the power stays on in River Falls. So tomorrow I'll have a chance to say thanks to them again, and if you folks get a chance, somehow reach out, thank a lineman tomorrow. They do a great job. They take a lot of pride in their craft and making sure the lights are on here in River Falls. That's it.
I think I had a couple announcements. One was, looks like May 8th is the utility-sponsored spring cleanup.
May 8th through the 15th, is that the correct day? What's that Saturday? So Linea's gonna look at the calendar so we get that right. And this is from May 8th through the 16th, 13th. This is Monday through Saturday, starting Monday, May 8th. So let's just take it till that Saturday. And it opens at 5 o'clock every day or 4 o'clock? 4 to 8, and then Friday 8 till noon. Saturday 8 to noon. Okay, I'm gonna go over the hours again. 4 to 8, Monday through Friday, Saturday, 8 to noon. Spring cleanup down on Benson Street. Bring your stuff.
Sounds good.
That's Drinking Water Week as well. That week. I'm not sure what that means yet, but we're gonna celebrate our water cruise that week. Toast a glass of tap water.
Right.
It's about $2 for 1,000 gallons, clean, fresh, cold, and delivered. Best value in town.
All right, and any other announcements? I think I had one more announcement. I received some unsettling news from our mayor. I originally was asked to join the UAB by Mayor Dan Tolan because he wanted someone who would speak against the destruction of the two utility-owned hydros. He asked for a person with a voice. Recently, the mayor has switched and no longer appreciates my comments about the hydros and has asked me to leave the UAB. So tonight is going to be my last night. I did want to say I'm very proud to have worked with Wayne and Dean and Lene and Kevin, Mark, Tim. It's been a pleasure. And Chris. So it's been really fun. I've enjoyed it. I've loved to listen to the reports and work with the people. So thank you, and I wish you the best. And with that, look for a motion to adjourn.
Hold on one second. I'm gonna present you with a plaque that I left upstairs that Lene went to grab. So this is where you have to tap dance just for a sec. Chris, you can tap dance, no? So this is that awkward silence in a meeting. They call it dead air, I guess. I don't know, but she went up to Ronnie. I do have a plaque for you, and we have it, and I'm anxious to present it to you. Thanks for on our show our appreciation for 5 years of service on the Utility Advisory Board. So it's quite a while. It's a fast 5 years.
And it's really been fun to work with you, Kevin.
Well, it's been fun
It
to
really
work with you
has.
too, Mark.
You are definitely a professional. So,
We try. We have a good crew.
yep.
You say in any business, right? It's all about the people. And like I said, in that storm, it makes you realize when you have good people, you can do great things. And, Wayne Cyberling here, he's the superintendent of those people, and he's coaching them up well. They're all well trained and well thought out. So it's good. And Dean's guys are all getting trained up and certified in both water and wastewater. So, there. So Lene, you want to take a picture? You have your phone. We have cameras. So Mark, I'll just ask you to come out front here, Mark, and I'll present you with a
So if we get a motion to adjourn.
I move adjournment.
Second.
Great. Meeting is adjourned.